folks have said, and I'll say for myself, I do not support endless wars. I know that when we send in troops, we need to ensure that we know how we're going to get them back out, home with their families. Many Republican colleagues and Democrats for a while have agreed that the war in Afghanistan needed to end. And just a few years ago, when Donald Trump was president, Republicans in Congress were raving about the need for a speedy withdrawal. And my Republican colleague, Mr. Biggs, had publicly called for an immediate withdrawal from Afghanistan. Our chairman, Comer, praised the Trump-Taliban agreement, which was riddled with concessions, including the release of 5,000 Taliban members. And the agreement that President Trump made set a deadline to withdraw that I would say even worse, January 15th, a time of transition just a few days before President Biden was sworn in. And so now that President Biden had the courage to do what President Trump couldn't, which was saying no to the endless war, now we have this political outrage. And the reality of war, especially this war, is that withdrawal was always going to be messy. And Mr. Storch, I want to ask, can you point to a specific thing you believe that President Biden could have done to guarantee a safe and orderly withdrawal with no lives lost?
Thank you for the question. So we have not done any oversight regarding what one administration or the other did with regard to that. We did find a number of issues, and some of them are very similar to the ones that IG Sopko talked about, that led to the rapid demise of the Afghan security force, and that led to the much more expedited non-combatant operation.
And given that the war in Afghanistan spanned decades and countless Americans serving overseas, if President Biden had waited another year or deployed another 100,000 troops, would that have helped guarantee a safe and orderly withdrawal with no lives lost?
Again, that's not something we've done independent oversight on, although as I've testified before, one of the things we did do is get a copy of the full after action that was done, and we're examining that now, and if there's additional lessons learned or oversight to be done, we'll do that.
Okay. Ms. Andrella, if President Biden had doubled the amount of aid that we're providing, can you say that that would have prevented the rise of a Taliban government?
We haven't done specific work on that, so I couldn't say.
And Ms. Shaw, I think you know kind of where I'm going with this, but if President Biden had renegotiated the terms of the withdrawal, bearing in mind that the Taliban were already ignoring many of the Trump administration's lax terms, would that have guaranteed a safe and orderly withdrawal?
So not specifically speaking to decisions that might have been made with the president, which are not in my purview, but the upcoming work that we've done did find that there were contributing factors that led to the confusion and chaos, including, unreliable data about the number of evacuees. So there are definitely opportunities for improvement. That work will have recommendations. And certainly we are fully supportive of ensuring that we all learn from the mistakes of the past.
Of course. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina, Representative Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. I thank our witnesses for being here today. You know, it's getting a little tiresome to hear President Trump blamed over and over for the Afghan withdrawal. It was the Biden administration that pushed the disastrous and chaotic withdrawal, and it's the Biden administration that's responsible for its poor execution. We all have confidence in our military, but when they're given orders from their commander-in-chief, they follow those orders. Mr. Sopko, were the orders to withdraw in the manner that they withdrew given by the Biden administration?
Congresswoman, as I mentioned before, we did not look at the withdrawal, my agency, so I really, you could ask the State Department IG, I think they looked at the withdrawal.
Ms. Andrella, do you have a comment on that?
From USAID's perspective, no.
No. Ms. Shaw?
I'm sorry, do you mind restating the question?
Were the orders to withdraw in the manner that they withdrew given by the Biden administration?
So our work looks specifically at decisions and directions given by embassy leadership at the time. And so we did find that they were taking primary lead, working with the Department of Defense to execute that non-combatant evacuation.
But somebody had to give the order to the embassy, right?
Presumably so.
Presumably so. Okay. Mr. Storch.
Yes, ma'am.
were the orders to withdraw from Afghanistan given by the Biden administration?
So, thank you for the question. We reported out in the lead IG reporting on the facts of what happened with the operation. In terms of doing any oversight related to that, as I've testified, when the evacuation took place, our office pivoted to working on very time-sensitive issues related to the evacuation itself, to the refugees and that. So we haven't done any independent oversight that I could testify to. As I've also testified, we have gone back and gotten the full after action that was done by the department. And my folks and I are examining that, and if there's work to be done, we'll do it.
I think it's a pretty pitiful situation where we have 4 federal government employees who cannot answer a simple question: was the order to withdraw given by the Biden administration? I'm really not sure that that's under any question.
Congresswoman, I will cut to the chase. Obviously, the Biden administration was in charge, so the order had to come from the Biden administration. I think what all the IGs are saying, particularly mine, I have no jurisdiction to look at that decision. But obviously, it was made by the Biden.
I didn't ask you to look at the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I asked a simple question.
Yeah.
Were the orders to withdraw given by the Biden administration?
Somebody in the Biden administration gave those orders.
Okay.
I'll take a risk and say that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, to the extent that's the question, there's no question.
A federal government employee taking a risk. Oh my goodness, this is a red letter day. Ms. Angelella, do you agree with that?
I would agree with IG Sopko, yes.
All right, let's take this again. Ms. Shaw, will you agree with that?
Yes, I will agree.
And Mr. Storch.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, finally we get an answer out of this panel having to do with the withdrawal. Okay. Probably my next question is going to be a waste, but so I'll go on. Let me ask this question, or let me make a comment. I think the hasty and chaotic withdrawal reeks of poor planning, failed execution, paid with the blood of American soldiers. But as inspectors general, all of you had offices at the U.S. Embassy in Afghanistan. So what was your experience like while planning and executing the evacuation of your offices?
I'm happy to answer that. I think the statement you made about it being confusing, hectic, and whatever, I did have people there. It was. And I think the best example of this, if you can get access to it, is to get a hold of the descent cable. Because what we were told, I've never seen it, but there was a descent cable done by career State Department employees who describe, we've been told, the problems and how chaotic and how horrible it was at that situation.
Well, thank you for that information. Ms. Angelella.
Yeah, I would say our direct hire American Foreign Service officer staff were withdrawn earlier, but USAID IG had locally employed staff, 6 of whom were trying day in and day out to get to and through the Abbey Gate. And as a member of the senior leadership team at the time, we were engaging 24 hours a day on a text message exchange with all of that staff. And as I testified, it will stay with me forever.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw.
So our 2 remaining U.S. personnel left with the ordered departure in April 2021, so did not experience the circumstances of August, but our work did find that it was confusing and chaotic.
Thank you. Mr. Storch.
Yes, ma'am. We had a number of offices at different times in Afghanistan doing oversight. The number of people in country started to decline beginning in 2016, and then with COVID. So by the time of the actual demise of the Afghan government and the like, we were primarily working from Qatar and other locations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I apologize for going over.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Chair now recognizes Ranking Member Lynch from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate your great work on all these issues as well. I just want to clear up something that was said earlier in the hearing hours ago. Before, Mr. Chairman, before you were in the chair, there was an allegation that our committee and specifically my subcommittee had not done oversight of the withdrawal process or including the Biden-Harris administration's Afghanistan withdrawal. I just want to remind my colleagues that in the 117th Congress, my National Security Subcommittee held 3 separate hearings regarding U.S. policy in Afghanistan, including one with former Special Representative for Afghan Reconstruction, Zalmay Khalilzad, after President Biden announced the withdrawal in April. In August 2021, at Mr. Grothman's request, who was my ranking member then, Republican colleagues, we received a bipartisan briefing for the subcommittee from one of today's witnesses, Special Inspector General John Sopko. The subcommittee also received a classified briefing jointly from state DOD, DHS, and intelligence community in September 2021. And in December 2021, we held another hearing on withdrawal, and we had a classified briefing on the administration's counterterrorism policies, including in Afghanistan. So to claim that the Democrats hadn't done oversight on Afghanistan is simply not true. In addition to those formal settings, we also sat with the negotiating team, Donald Trump's negotiating team with the Taliban at the Munich Security Conference, and also here at the Capitol with Republican leadership. We were able to sit down with twice. We had 2 luncheons with President Ghani and his whole team after the agreement had been signed to withdraw by the Trump administration with the Taliban, but prior to actual withdrawal. So, oddly enough, I was elected on September 11th, the day of the attacks. So as soon as I arrived in Washington, D.C. as a new member of Congress, Afghanistan was at the top of our list of priorities. During my time in Congress, I've led or participated in over 20 CODELs to Afghanistan. Mr. Sopko and I are old friends. We have done a lot of work, and Mr. Sopko, you're an honest broker in all of this. You've seen enough of me and enough of, and every single CODEL I did was with Democrat and Republican members. I never ever, and I know sometimes people do this, but I never ever went to Afghanistan without Republican members as part of as important and participating members of those congressional delegations. So, Mr. Sopko, there was a suggestion that we were a hindrance. The Democrats were a hindrance to getting information, on the ground in Afghanistan, and getting information to Congress. What do you think? I mean, in terms of, you saw this committee and the subcommittee, particularly in action many times in Afghanistan. Were we a hindrance to getting the truth and the information, or we of assistance to you?
Congressman, furthest from the truth. This committee, yourself included, the chairman now, the ranking members, this has been, I mean, I've testified, I think, 11, 12 times for his committee. This committee has cared more about Afghanistan and more about getting the truth than probably any other committee of Congress. So, I mean, kudos to all of you for what you did and what you're continuing to do, I hope. So I can't say more about how happy I am to come back here. My first committee I ever testified about in Afghanistan was this committee. I think it was, maybe you were chairing at that time. I remember Chairman Issa, and my mind is going to forgive me who the ranking member was, and he said, Mr. Sopko, you're about the only witness who brings us all together in a bipartisan manner. And I will remember that, because that's what the job of an IG is, to be nonpartisan, to bring people together to try to get the facts. And this committee should be proud of itself for doing that. And I think under Chairman Comer, I think it's continuing that. So that's all I can say. And then,
well, that's plenty. Mr. Chairman, just on a request on a unanimous consent request. So the Committee of Democrats have long supported the vital work of Inspectors General, and we appreciate the work that you do. That is why last Congress, my colleague, then Chair, Maloney and I was then chair as well, subcommittee chair, we spearheaded a bipartisan request to SIGAR to examine the factors that contributed to the collapse of the Afghan government and its security forces last September. As Mr. Sopko has testified before, this request led to 5 reports that have provided us and the American people with exceptional insights into the failures and mistakes over 20 years that explain the rapid collapse of the Afghan government and its armed forces. So what I would ask, and I, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Chairman Comer, Full Committee Chair Comer, would be an effort to draft another letter similar to the one that we tried to do last session to support our inspectors general and to encourage the administration and the agencies to be forthcoming and cooperative with the Attorney General community in terms of getting the information and the truth and the facts out so that we might learn from those lessons and maybe prevent missteps from being made in the future.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that the Inspector General, clearly the Inspector General's offices play a vital and critical role. We need independent oversight. And I'm sure that myself, the other subcommittee chairs, and Chairman Comer would very much like to write a letter and supporting in a bipartisan fashion the work of the IGs, because it's just one tool to get to one critical tool to get to the truth. So
and I'll leave it up to our very capable staffs to come up with language that would reflect that intent. Well, and I yield back, and I thank you for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank each one of you for your service to the country. You can imagine that we as members of Congress and the legislative branch have a little bit of a difficult time getting information from the administration, if for no other reason than they're the executive branch and we're the legislative branch and the whole separation and so on and so forth. But I'm concerned that it's deeper than that, and there are reasons other than that. And in the shadow of tax day, I don't know that most Americans, look, a lot of people in the last couple of days just wrote checks to the federal government. They're probably not real happy about it, and they probably don't realize, and this is according to your report, sir, Mr. Sopko, that since October of 2021, the American taxpayers spent $8,275,952,000 in Afghanistan. That's since October 2021. And also included in your report 23-16, the United States left 43,139 ground vehicles behind in Afghanistan, specialty munitions, including millions of rounds of small arms ammunition in the tune of 37,000 rounds. Weapons, from Mark IVs and M16s to howitzers and mortar systems, 316,260. Aircraft vehicles, including individual GPS devices, 22,950. These numbers are staggering. They are staggering. They are unacceptable. Now, in previous conversations with some of my colleagues, the other inspector generals kind of implied and gave me the impression via the questioning that everybody's cooperating and there's no obstruction. And I want to drill down on that, because that's not the perception I get from Mr. Sopko. And if you're getting something different, then we need to know that. But according to a November 22nd report, found that the Taliban likely gained access to approximately $57.6 million in funds. And I just remind everybody, we say the Taliban. Let's remind ourselves that the Taliban is a murderous terrorist regime, a murderous terrorist regime. $57.6 million in funds that DOD, state, and USAID provided to the former Afghan government, yet the murderous Taliban has them. And it also in the report says that the 3 agencies did not provide or were unable to provide SIGAR with information showing the amount of on-budget assistance funds they left in the country at the time of the Taliban takeover. So are they just not complying with him, or are they providing you with this information regarding the $57.6 million that goes to DOD, sir, ma'am, state, and ma'am, USAID? What say you?
So a couple things. Thank you for the question. First of all, we have not experienced a lack of cooperation in getting information from the department. With regard to the important question you asked about equipment that was left behind, I believe the department in its submissions to the Hill has estimated $7.12 billion worth of equipment that was in the hands of the Afghan military when it collapsed. They have indicated that much of that may not still be in operation. Mr. Sopko's talked, and we had similar work about the lack.
So are you saying they're cooperating with you, but not the special inspector general in Afghanistan? They're fully cooperating with you.
What I was,
and should he be coming to you for the information since he can't get it from DOD?
so it's a great question. So let me just to finish the last point. We have no ability to audit, obviously, in Afghanistan at this point to determine how much.
Yeah, I know, and the server went down, and we don't know where the equipment
Right.
was, and oh my goodness,
Right.
we got to spend more money on the military.
With regard to our office, we have not experienced any lack of cooperation from the department.
So once again, should Mr. Sopko be talking to you since DOD won't cooperate with him?
Well, it's the department's information. I'm happy to help with any IG to ensure.
How about
that,
state?
So we also have not encountered any lack of cooperation or access issues related to our Afghanistan oversight. We deconflict our work, so we're not looking at those same questions when we know that SIGAR is looking at them. So we haven't encountered the same issues. We are about to launch work to look specifically at how the embassy disposed of its armored vehicles and sensitive assets. So we do have work in that space that we hope will answer questions.
So the report, the October 22nd report, also details states' failure to complete required oversight and evaluation of its anti-terrorism assistance program in Afghanistan. Do you recognize that as true, and have the information they provided lead you to the same conclusion or a different conclusion?
We haven't looked specifically at that issue because that was an issue that SIGAR was looking at, so we work really hard to stay out of their way.
But if they can't get the information, should he come to you?
He's certainly welcome to. He has not.
And how about USAID?
Yeah, we are happy to do joint work.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I yield.